I've done it.
The tallest tower of boxes ever assembled. With my not quite finished, damn it.
Everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another review video, and today we are reviewing the entirety of the Leagues of Votann range. Yes, we've got them all here. We have the Brokhyr Thunderkyn, we have the Grimnyr, we have the Einhyr Hearthguard, we have the Brokhyr Iron-Master, we have the running out of room in my hands. We have the Sagitaur. We have the Cthonian Beserks. And we have the Hekaton Land Fortress. I have become product. Yes, this incredible pile of gear was sent to me early by Games Workshop to build up, paint, and review for all of you. I don't know how to put all of this down. Okay, you just all get... So yes, we have the entire range, or the remaining parts of the range for the Leagues of Votann here at Warhipster Towers. And well, I must apologise first and foremost. You see, I had hoped to get everything built, everything painted, to have a seamless week of incredible Leagues of Votann content for all of you. However, I am slow, and I wasn't very well. So, I've been able to do most of it, but there are two things that I haven't finished yet, so you'll forgive me that they don't feature in their painted version in this video. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. But if you would like to make sure that you see those two videos as and when they come out, make sure you hit the subscribe button and like the video. Also comment below and tell me how disappointed you am. You am? It's been a long week. Yes, we have got 5 of them painted, but don't worry, all 7 of these boxes have been built, and this video is showing you the sprues, the things to watch out for when you're building your Leagues of Votann kits, and we'll have a sneak preview of the things that I have actually finished this week for you, towards the end. So with all that in mind, we're just going to jump right in. So let's take a look, shall we, at the rest of the Leagues of Votann.
So with our Grimnyr, we get an instruction manual, we get the sprue, obviously, we get a 40mm base and 2 25mm bases, as well as 3 plastic rods. You're going to need all 3, you're going to need 2. So, we'll have a quick look at the instructions. So as you can see, oh well, there we go, the cords immediately. Just looking at the instructions, as you can see, they consist of 2 pieces, which means they are nice and easy to construct, which is always a nice thing. We've got, as we can see from this and there, it is a ball joint. So we're going to leave that off rather than stick it in. That way we can prime these guys without ruining the stick. Looking at the robes itself, we do have some kind of seams on the robe, which is a little bit unfortunate. And we do have the head options looking pretty cool. This is a little bit technically difficult to do when you just have to manage how much glue you have when you're gluing hair to heads like this. If you have too much glue, you'll press the hair in and then it'll splurge the glue out, which is not always the best thing. That head is entirely one piece, which is very, very, very nice. The cloak is in one piece, as we can see, which is very cool, and the feet go up into the cloak, so it's going to be a nice sturdy fit when it's on at its base. So let's have a look at the sprue and see how it's all connected. So First things first, as we can see on here, the corve is attached by the dome head. So that is going to be a little bit tricky, that we're going to have to watch that when we're clipping that off to make sure that we're not causing it to flatten out, and especially when we're going to be smoothing that out, it's going to be quite tricky. You have to take your time there with both the corve bodies. They're both attached by the head. Otherwise, by the looks of things, we don't have too many difficult outward facing pieces or connections on the sprue, which is always nice to see. As you can see, for example, this head, there's a connection there at the end of the trail on either of those, and there we have one on the head as well, so we'll have to be careful there. Whereas on the rest of these cloaked sections, all of the connections are on the outside, which is very, very nice building. We've got an outside connection point just here on the front of the cloak, and here on the hand. So we're going to have to be careful of those sections, but otherwise it seems to be a pretty good nick sprue. Shouldn't be too difficult to build this one. So with that in mind, it's time to get building. So we're going to hit that time-lapse button and off we go. So here's the Brokhyr Iron-Master. So as per usual, we get our instruction manual here in the box. We get the sprue, and it is just this one sprue. Well, it's technically two. There's a dividing line here. We get the one sprue. We get a 32mm base, a 28.5mm base, and three 25mm bases. Now I am guessing that, but I think I'm right. Yeah, 32. 28, 25, 25, and 25. Because obviously within the Brokhyr Iron-Master we have the man himself, we have the assistant, and we have the three corves. We also get a transfer sheet, this lovely gorgeous transfer sheet that we've seen before. And well, what we're going to do now is we're going to have a quick look at the instructions. So here we are then. So it's only 1 and 2 and a bit of a third page there, as you can see. It doesn't look like we have any options other than where to put the goggles down here. The corves are in relatively simple shape, and they are not on flight stands, which is always nice to see. It means they'll have a nice secure footing and they'll be easy to prime. Continuing to have a little look here, we have quite this awesome kind of way that they have been doing this with the Votann kits, where the back of the coat presses into the front of the coat, thereby creating no seams. Rather than having the coat be in two kind of halves that go that way, it's that way down, which is a very, very, very cool way of doing it, and makes it for a lot, well, just kind of eliminates gaps and things, which is very nice. We can see that the rest of the bits are fairly simple to do. The only thing to worry about in here maybe is the hammer being in two halves that way along the face of the hammer, which could be a little frustrating if we're not careful with those gaps. So if we have a quick look at the sprue itself, you can see if there are any problematic contact points. And initially I'm drawn here to the body, where if you look there at those legs, without kind of getting to all of those built bits, you've got these contact points on the outside of the legs and on the chest, so you want to be a little bit careful around there. Whereas what's quite nice here on the front of the coat, the contact points are underneath the kind of lapels, and on the top there on that nice flat surface, which makes it quite easy to clip out and to clean off. The corves are quite good. We've got one here on the shoulder to be worried about. Make sure that that's nice and smooth. Same here on this guy. We've got two on either shoulder that we'll need to be careful of. Same here as well on these back pieces, all three of them. Otherwise, it looks fairly well laid out. I'm pretty impressed by this sprue, given how many models come in here. We get 5 in total. It doesn't feel like there's tons of components on here, which is really cool. I mean, it goes together nice and quickly. So, with all that in mind, it's now time to build the Brokhyr Iron-Master. Next up, we have Cthonian Berserks. Here they are. You get a box of 5 of them for every, well, box that you purchase. And inside that box, you of course get your instruction manual. You get 1 50mm base, 5 28mm bases, and 3 25mm bases. And you get this handy dandy diagram for your bases to check that you've got the right size to apply them to. And as you can see, that 50mm base fits perfectly in the circle. So when you're looking through the instructions and it tells you to put a 25mm base on there, you can just use this little diagram to make sure you've got the right one, as the differences between 25 and 28 visually are not that immediately obvious if you're tired or it's dark or something like that. Additionally, in the box, you got the bases. We get 3 sprues, which we'll look at in just a moment. And for some reason in my box, I've got 2 transfer sheets. This might be a mispack. I'm not entirely sure why you would need 2, but I've got 2 in mine for some peculiar reason. Not entirely certain as to why. So, got a big pile of transfer sheets building up here, which is awesome. So let's have a quick look at the instructions then. So, as you can see in here, you get the option to build 2 of the mole grenades. You have the options for 5 berserks and an Ironkin assistant. This is because the Ironkin assistant goes as part of the mole launcher. The reason you get 3 25mm bases is because there is an option in here to build the Ironkin as a separate Ironkin. Where is he? There we go, as you can see. But I believe if you want to do the mole launcher, which I do, you're going to have to put him on the same base as the Berserk. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages worth of instructions, and you have the options to build them with plasma axes, the concussion gauntlet on the Thane or leader or whatever it is called in this unit, or you have the option for all concussion mauls. This is the one we're going to be doing because, well, I do want to play with these guys, and I think the concussion mauls will be a slightly better option than the plasma axes. Not to say that the plasma axes are bad. Each one seems fairly simple to do, with roughly 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 15 pieces, one would assume. So upon looking at the sprues then, you get these 2 sprues, although this is 3 kind of half sprues, as it were. And as per usual, we're inspecting them to see if there is any places which are going to cause us difficulty when we're assembling our Cthonian Berserks. So for example, here on piece 71 on this hand, you've got this connection point here on the glove. You've got a mold line just there as well. Same for the boot. You've got the inside area, which you need to absolutely shave down to make sure you get nice clean coverage and connection point. The mold grenades are just in one piece as far as I can tell, which is very, very nice. And this body here looks to be fairly simple to clip out. You do have your connection points on the flesh though, which comes with some challenges on occasion. Looking at the other ones, it's a similar story. Some of the legs, some of the arms have the connection points on the flesh. For example, this piece here, piece 55, the connection point is on the actual flesh itself. Same at this end as well. So you do want to be very careful here when you're doing these things. Don't apply too much pressure with the mold liner, really, otherwise you'll get that kind of jaggediness. And also using the knife will flatten it out if you're not careful. Otherwise, as per usual with these Votann kits, they're pretty nicely laid out. Pretty well attached to the sprue. Maybe slightly frustrating point, or areas that could cause some frustration, are when you got those connection points on the flesh. You'll just want to be nice and careful there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build one Cthonian Berserk. I will of course time how long it takes, and then I will get on with building the rest of the unit. So we're going to start with this guy. So here we have the Brokhyr Thunderkyn. Now, in the set, as per usual, we receive a transfer sheet, just the one. In this one, we get 3 40mm bases. We have our sprues, so technically 3, but comes on 2 sprues, like that in the box. And we have our instruction manual. And you should probably have figured out the format for this so far. So what we're going to be doing is checking out the instruction manual first. Now, the first thing I notice here is we have no labeling on what any of the guns are. Oh dear. So, I understand not wanting to have any words or text in the instruction manuals to make them more accessible. However, it's a little bit of a markdown, I think, for this particular instruction manual, particularly with something that's a brand new faction as well and a brand new unit, to not mark in some way what each of these 3 weapons are. Now, we're going to do a little bit of public service announcement here. This likely fella, so component number 20, component number 37, and component number 54. Those are the bolt cannon options. This one here, so 35, 16, and 52, those are the conversion beamer, and 36, 18, and 53 are the grav gun. We'll show you them on the sprue in just a moment to see what they actually look like, but it's a little bit of a miss there, I think, not having them labelled as what they are. And this has been consistent with some of the Votann kits, particularly with something like the Einhyr champion. No, not him. The Hearthguard, where none of the weapons were labelled. You kind of had to just kind of guess as to which ones were which, or use the codex to figure out, based on the pictures and the captions that they've got on the codex, to figure out which one is which. A little bit of a miss to not have it in the instruction manual. However, looking at the build for these, it seems pretty simple. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 plus 1, 18, 19, 20 components per model. And if you look at the sprues very quickly here, you see it's kind of laid out 1, 2, and 3, which is
just very, very useful. Looking at these, we don't seem to have much in the way of kind of slightly annoying pieces to put together. The only ones to maybe watch out for here are on the grav gun, where you have to add the barrel to the grav. Just there, that little section of barrel, and 23 and 24, 3 and 4, 40 and 41. Having to kind of glue those together, you might get a seam down the middle. But otherwise, those bodies being in full one single piece with a little courgette put on the front, that's a very nice touch. I'm a big fan of that. And the other options that we get in the box are a number of different heads, 6 of them to be precise, on which we can put some goggles as well. Don't have to, but clearly they're there as options to put on all 3. And we get a little Ironkin head as well, which is always great to see. So let's have a quick look at those sprues then, shall we? So I'm guessing we only really need to look at one of the sprues. We can pop this knife down. So we'll just look at this one. So my initial thoughts when looking at this are, once again, that it is very nicely laid out. You can see here on the main body the contact points that might be a little bit kind of a make sure you take your time over contact point are here and here on the body, whereas the other 2 are on the underside of the feet, which is quite nice. There's not any kind of particularly large mold lines on the body, which is always good to see. As you can see with the shoulders and things like that, these armor panels, they're largely kept to the ends. However, just here on component 13, which is a shoulder pad, one of the big chunky ones that they have where they face into the fire, you've got this little bit just here. Now this will go on the back of the shoulder, but you still need to be careful just there when pulling that off to make sure you get that nice and smooth. Otherwise, it's pretty good. The heads are attached via the neck, which is always a good thing. And yeah, no, I'm pretty impressed with this sprue as well. The guns, they are what they are. We have contact points on the barrel here for the bolt cannon, same for the conversion beamer. And for conversion beamer, you want this dome to be nice and smooth, so that one will be a point of which to be very careful around. Make sure you use a combination of knife and mold line remover to get that nice and smooth. Otherwise, these sprues look pretty darned awesome. If we flip that one over, that might look exactly the same. Not quite, so just a tiny little variation just there. Whereas this one maybe is the same. Again, slight tiny variation. These guns are flipped by the looks of things. Yes. Alright, well, it's time to build some Brokhyr Thunderkyn. Once again, we're going to build one of them, and, well, once that's done, we'll come back for the next kit. So here we have it then, Einhyr Hearthguard. So as per usual, we get a transfer sheet, and we have our instruction manual. We have a pack of 5 32mm bases, which is interesting. I would have thought the Hearthguard would be on 40mm bases. You know, they're sort of a Terminator equivalent, but there we go. 5 32mm bases. We also have our 2 full sprues now, as you can see, and they are pretty cool. So, as per usual, we're going to have a look through that instruction manual before we go any further. This is a proper booklet here, so it doesn't have
It's not a fold out like we've had so far. And there is a number of different options that we get in this manual. We have the plasma blades, we have the mass hammer, and we have the concussion gauntlets here as well. We also have Volkite disruptors, I think, or disintegrators, I think they're called, and the plasma weapons. However, once again, in this manual, we don't have a labeling as to what they are exactly. So we have to use our powers of deduction to figure out exactly which ones are which. Now, the plasma blade is fairly obvious. It is this type of gadget. It's a blade, and there aren't any other blades in this kit. The mass hammer is fairly obvious as well, as we have that concussion maul, or whatever it's called. There's a lot of different types of hammers and mauls in this range. And the gauntlets are as they are. You should be able to find them in just a moment, wherever they've gone. Where is it? Ah, yes, it's part of the plasma blade assembly. Instead of putting the blade on it, you put the kind of cap on it. And that gives you the concussion gauntlet, which is pretty cool. We get a number of pages of instructions. Oh, actually, we should look at what the Volkite looks like. This here is the Volkite, and that is the plasma. You see, you can tell them apart by the angularness of the Volkite, as well as the little barrel. So it's an oval shape, kind of more like that, whereas the plasma is a round barrel, which is the way to tell them apart, I guess, because we don't really have coils, as far as I can tell, looking at them. Doesn't look to me like there's plasma coils, but we'll find out. Otherwise, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages worth of instructions. And much like with the Brokhyr Thunderkyn, once you get to the end, that's when you then put all of the grenade launchers on. Whereas in the Brokhyr's case, it was all of the heads. You get a number of different head options here, and you don't get enough to give, you do get enough to give everybody helmets, which is very cool. Otherwise, you can give them all bare heads or open-faced helmets as well, which is very, very nice. Brokhyr, though, there were no covered heads. Should just point that out, because I don't think I did. So, let's have a quick look at the sprues. Pop that out of the way. So we can only, probably will have to look at both of them, because 2 sprues for 1 kit. However, looking at them, we have a slight issue here. So with these helmeted heads, as you can see, the connection point to the sprue is on the top of the head. So when you're using the helmets, you're going to have to scrape it off very carefully so you don't get an imperfection around the head. And that's because that's a focal point, so it's one to really absolutely bear in mind. We've got some contact points here on the shoulder pads as well, on the front part of each of those chest pieces. However, there should be somewhere shoulder pads. Doesn't look like it. Oh no, these are, yeah, so the shoulder pads should go over the top, as you can see by kind of a little bit more how they're quite buff in the shoulder. The gauntlets here do have attachments on the outside, and the blade there has and there. Check all of them. Yeah, they all appear to have connection points to the sprue on the actual blade itself. So the issue with that is that you have to be very careful that you don't kind of cut out, like, so that the edge of your blade doesn't kind of, well, on the case of the mold line remover here, doesn't look like that, as it were, or that you don't kind of get this as very extreme example. If you use a knife, you end up with this kind of, you can end up with like a gouge coming out of the blade. So you do have to be very, very careful there on those plasma blades. You could use this little notch here, for example, just to make sure that you're getting it nice and smooth, if you've got the new Citadel mold line remover, that is. Otherwise, On the Plasma, we've got attachment points on the top, whereas on the Volkite, it's on the barrel. By the looks of things, I think that's fairly consistent. Oh no, changes here and here. And then the main body, we have some attachment points on the back of the body, at least on the sides, so on the legs. So you want to be careful on that kind of stabilizing port there, that you get that nice and smooth. All of the bear heads are attached by the neck, which is good to see. And this kind of the Thanes or the Haesir, whichever one it is for this unit, on these sections, your contact points are unfortunately on the actual front facing detail, so you'll need to be very careful when choosing which one of these. This one will be slightly more difficult because you've got that kind of much tighter detail here and there, whereas this one should be a little bit easier because it's the rounded ram's head. Otherwise, this is a pretty neat sprue. Here we have the Sagitaur, the little fast half transport vehicle that the Leagues of Votann can use to deploy their troops to the front line, Hearthguard or the Cthonian Berserks, for example. Also a battle bus full of characters. It comes in this little half box, not in a big A4 box, as you see sometimes with the vehicles, which is really nice. It's quite a thick, chunky box. You get one of them in the box, however you can take them in squadrons of 2. So if you're looking to take a squadron of 2, you'll need to pick up 2 boxes. Inside, you of course get a transfer sheet. There it is, same one that we've seen so far. It's not a specific vehicle transfer sheet, which is always nice to see. Very much compatible with all of your Leagues of Votann. We have 3 plastic sprues, or grey plastic sprues, and we get a clear plastic sprue as well for the cockpits and various little different glass sections that you can see here. 1, 2, and I think this is the 3rd part that goes on the front just there. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at that instruction manual, just popping aside our grey plastic sprues just for the moment and our clear plastic one. So within our instruction manual, I should say, here we have it. So we have 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I think 10 pages all in all. We get a lot of wheels, which you'll see. However, what you get in here is you get a really nice set of instructions. You do get this little key that we haven't really touched on just yet because it's been fairly the same for all of them. However, we do have the stage complete button there, but we have this little paint before assembly. Now this is this cockpit here because the glass goes on over the top, the glass being the clear plastic cockpit there, like that. What we won't do is build that and then paint it and then build the rest of it. What we will do is we'll fully assemble, then we'll prime it before we put these glass pieces on. So we're going to pop those pretty much to one side for the duration of the build, like that. You get a couple of moments where that happens. So here is the other one, which we can put the second cockpit on there, and it gets to the end, I believe, where it tells you, yes, here on the last page, which is when you put your glass pieces on the top. However, this looks fairly simple in terms of build. There's nothing kind of really in the way that's too surprising. Not having to glue these cockpit pieces on before you, or at the same time as gluing in these the pilot, the crew, just makes assembly of such things quite easy. Also, there isn't an indication that you glue the body in before you put the arms on, which is just one of those things that sometimes you get in some of these kits for vehicles which have got visible crew members, which makes it a lot easier to do. Same here, gluing putting the pilot together before you put them in to the cockpit, which is always just a really nice touch. At least have it designed that way that it fits in such a way. But otherwise, it is fairly simple. Now, once again, we have 3 different weapon options for the turret mounted weapon. This is the one that goes on top. And unfortunately, they are not labeled as to what they are within this instruction manual, which is a bit of a shame. Now, we can identify what they are. You have this missile launcher assembly, which is fairly simple. It's the L7 there and the Sagitaur missile launcher there. However, you put them both together, but you would only pay points for, or at least on your data sheet, have one of these be active effectively. It's quite a nice touch, but at the same time, it could be a little bit confusing. If you take the L7 missile launcher, it makes a little bit more sense because you would have your frag missiles there and your big crack missiles there. They're called something different in the codex, but you would be able to make that distinction. Whereas the Sagitaur missile launcher only fires one kind of setting of missiles, so it would just be these ones, but that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So that's your missile launcher. Over here, you have your 2 options. This is the high las beam cannon, and this is the stock option that comes on the Sagitaur, and this is the Mater auto cannon, which might look a little bit familiar because it looks like the one that comes on the Thunderkyn Pioneers. If you hadn't already built your Thunderkyn Pioneers, that's kind of what it looks like. So depending on which one you want to use, assemble that one. However, it is just a little ball joint which you don't even really have to glue in, same as there's these kind of no glue options here to have the weapon be able to tilt and twizzle and turn. So thankfully you have different assemblies here, here and here in order to be able to choose all 3 weapon options, so you won't even have to magnetize this, I'm sure, but we'll figure that out once we get closer to the time when we come to actually popping in the weapon into the vehicle itself. So with all that in mind, let's have a quick look at those sprues. And as you can see, this one's fantastic because we have, well, a whole lot of wheels there, but we have just these massive bits of plastic there. So that's just very, very cool to see. It's very, very simple to put those types of things together. And based on our quick squiz through the instructions, you can see where the cockpit's going to go. This is pretty much the main assembly here for the Sagitaur missile launcher, for the Sagitaur vehicle itself. You get this one here, which has got a bunch of different components, and this one here as well. Upon closer inspection, when you're looking at the various things such as armor panels, these are the real outward facing areas on here. We do have our connection points on the outside of the armor panel, so you're gonna have to be very careful here when you're mold line removing these to make sure that they are nice and smooth. The wheels all appear to come in halves, but they have very little in the way of mold lines, which is very, very nice when it comes to wheels. And again, these are quite large areas of tread on the wheels, which is different to, say, Space Marine wheels, which are quite narrow, quite compact, and they can have quite heavy mold lines on them because they're often in a single piece. So it makes getting a nice smooth wheel, not that you might necessarily want that, but getting that mold line off on the wheels on kind of more traditional 40k kits can be a little bit challenging, whereas these look fairly simple, as it's, you know, less detail than you would normally see on something like, as example, a Space Marine wheel. You've got these bits in the area to clip out, so do make sure you don't forget to do that. And of course, don't throw this sprue away, despite having massive pieces on here. You've got the 2 little arms for the little Ironkin that sits in the back. On this sprue, again, we have some armor panels here, 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 and here. There we have the contact points on the outside. We have contact points on the outside of the cockpit. That's the base of the cockpit. However, that is going to sit in the vehicle, so it should be okay. Here we have a large assembly. This is an outward piece assembly, and they've done quite a good job here by connecting it just at either end rather than say right on, like, you know, the flat part of that part of the vehicle. However, on here we do have some contact points on the outside of the vehicle. So again, do just make sure you're being very careful when you're taking that flash off, that you're not going to gouge it too much, because then on a vehicle, for example, when the two pieces come together, you can end up with a scenario that's kind of like that happening, or like that happening. It's not a very good example with my hands, but you can end up with that sort of thing happening if you're too overzealous with your mold line remover. Finally, on this sprue, we do have, again, on the weapon here, and here we have some contact points on the outside. On these pistons we do as well, and these are on a kind of curved surface, so you do just want to make sure you're being very careful when you are pulling those apart from the sprue, that you're getting that nice smooth surface. These also appear to join together as far as I can tell. Oh no, these are the wheel assemblies. I assumed by having 4 you would be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, for example, but no, these seem to be a single piece, which is very cool to see. So yeah. And here we have the big boy itself, the Hekaton Land Fortress. Oh my goodness me. So, we're going to rapid fire rattle through this. The first thing you get is you get your transfer sheet. And you get your instruction booklet, and you get 1 clear plastic sprue, and then 1, 2, and 3 large grey plastic sprues. We've got some truly enormous bits of plastic on here, such as there, here, that's the undercarriage there. We've got the side panels here and here. Oh my goodness. This is a very, very cool sprue. So, we're going to have a quick look at that instruction manual, of course. And we're going to find a place to put these sprues. Pop them down there on the floor just for the moment. And looking through, here it is. So within this you get 3 different weapon options, and again, none of them have been labeled, which is a little bit of a miss. This is the kind of running theme, I think, for the Leagues of Votann stuff. It's just one of those things that I would like to have seen there be a little bit of indication as to what is what. However, we do have our Brokhyr Thunderkyn, on which that we can generally take those references as to what they are. However, the one that the Brokhyr don't have is the Magna Rail cannon, and that is this one just here. So this one is your Graviton there. That's what that looks like. And then this one is the Ion, because it looks like the rest of the Ion weapons that we've seen from the Leagues of Votann so far. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 pages worth of instructions. And as mentioned, you do get those weapon options for the main turret, but you also get some of these ball turrets, and you get a weapon option for both of them as well. So you get the bolt or you get the ion. Now, the ion and the bolt weapons attach to these ball mounts in the same way. So if you wanted to magnetize these, you absolutely could. You'd have to snip off the little plug that they have in there and then attach your magnet that way. So that's entirely possible. And when it comes to the main turret weapon, this is our NATO autocannon, which you get as stock on all of them, which I think you can change for a warhead, but I can't rightly remember. I'll check it in just a moment. But as you can see, you make this one housing for the main turret, and then you make 3 different barrels, and you can just slide it in by the looks of things if you wanted to. So a fairly easy swap job should you want to for magnetizing purposes. We do get those that clear plasticness as well here, which again you will leave off when you prime it if you want to. Paint what's inside. You'll then paint what's inside and then stick those on top, and then paint in the frame here, as you can see depicted on that picture just there. Otherwise, we've got those massive bits of plastic. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly check the codex. So yes, the Meta autocannon is a default option. You don't have a choice when it comes to getting rid of that. Instead, you would swap out the panspectral scanner, which doesn't look, as far as I can tell from this instruction manual, like it's a denoted piece that can be swapped out. We shall just give it a quick slow check, see if you can swap for those warheads that are in the options. Aha, yes, here we go. So you could keep that hatch closed and pop your, what's it called, warhead in. These are the 3 that you have. The Kin's Wrath warhead, for example, that is where they would go. However, you could just close the hatch, and that way you don't have to choose the right one, because I don't know which one each of these are. In fact, we could probably figure that out by looking in the codex, which you should do just now, and I'll do this live with you. So you have the Ancestor's Vengeance warhead, which is a heavy D6 shot, with the Kin's Wrath warhead, which is a heavy 2d6 shot, and with the Mountain Breaker warhead. So looking at it in the instruction manual, I would suggest that this one here, the kind of big chunky boy, that is the Mountain Breaker warhead. I would guess that the heavy D6 is the component 49, and the Kin's Wrath is component 48, if you wanted to be certain of it, but we don't know for sure at this point because it's not labelled as to which one is which. So, popping these aside, we're going to have a quick look at the clear plastic. As you can see, we've got the main cockpit here. We've got this one that will go on the top. This one will be part of this one, I'm sure. You've got these 2 to put on various points of the Hekaton Land Fortress as well. So again, oh, and we've got a little lens here as well. That's very cool. That's very, very cool. So we're going to pop that to one side, and we're going to have a look at those main grey plastic sprues, as we have done so far with all of the kits. We'll start with this one just here. Now, looking at the sprue, we can see already straight away we've got a mold line here on the undercarriage, but that is the kind of the bit that's at the bottom, so ultimately it's probably not that much of an issue. This is our top section though, and all of the connection points are on the outside of that section, as you can see. So you'll want to be careful when you're cutting these away, because again, you might end up, by pressing things together, that you end up with this kind of situation, which you don't want to have. You want it to be nice and flat like that. Using my fingers to demonstrate there. Same for this section here. This looks like it's either the back or on the top, and these pipes, I'm pretty sure, will feed into that in some way, shape or form. We have the large sections for the side, as you can see, starting to get a bit of a idea of scale for the Hekaton Land Fortress. That is the left-hand side, I think, and the right-hand side is here on my lap, and we have our cockpit here as well. Those wheels are pretty cool. Similarly to the Sagitaur, the wheels are nice and thickly designed, so any mold line removing that needs to take place on them will be nice and simple, rather than, as an example mentioned in the previous vehicle, that something like Space Marine vehicles sometimes struggle with. You've got these pipes and stuff which you do need to watch out for in terms of smoothing down the outside sections. because of the way that they are attached to the sprue. They're not attached to the sprue on the ends, which you wouldn't ever see. They are attached on the smooth surfaces, which are the outward facing areas. Same for these lights. They are attached by the curved sides, so you want to be nice and careful. We've got a bit of fiddliness just here on this hatch, so you just want to be careful when you're clipping there. Don't apply too much pressure. Make sure you clip here first so you don't put any stress on this section when you're clipping it just there, because that might bend because it's quite thin and small plastic. Lastly, we have this sprue, and again another side section just there. I need more of those large wheels. And here we can see the guns in terms of the size that we'll be dealing with on them. It's just very cool. Not as long as I thought it would be. But there you have it. We've got a couple of spindly little details here as well for the Ironkin hands, just like we had on the Sagitaur. But otherwise, this is a very nicely laid out sprue. All three of them look very cool. Have we got some mold lines on that main? Yes, we do. So on that main pipe, you won't really be able to see it just there too well on the camera, but there is a mold line on there just to be careful of when we're doing our cleanup of these components. So with that in mind, it's time to build the Hekaton Land Fortress.
So with all of our kits built, I did promise a little sneak preview at some of the stuff that I have actually got painted up this week. And well, here it is. Behold in all of its glory the Hekaton Land Fortress. We have the Grimnyr, and we have the Cthonian Beserks, the Brokhyr Thunderkyn, and the Einhyr Hearthguard, all painted up in the same style as my Great Arthurian League inspired personal custom League of Votann. There are elements here of the Great Arthurian League, for example the Hekaton, I think is what it's called, on the Einhyr Hearthguard, and we've painted the Grimnyr in generic Great Arthurian League colours, so we can basically watch that if we want to learn how to paint the Grimnyr in general. The Cthonian Berserks have elements of it. We painted one as a Great Arthurian League box art Cthonian Berserk, and the Hekaton Land Fortress, we've done a really cool thing with the green on there, which is very much transferable for any of your Great Arthurian League vehicles that you're going to be painting, and indeed Sons of Horus. But you'll see all about that in the video that's coming up later today, believe it or not. Isn't that all very exciting? I've got them here on the desk in front of me. Now, apart from the Sagitaur and the Brokhyr Iron-Master, unfortunately they are the ones that have not been painted in time for this video. However, I will be busying myself over the next 2 days to ensure that they get done and a video works its way over to you guys at home. Apart from them, I'm looking at the army together and it's awesome. I can really see how this army works in general as a full group of miniatures. It's just really cool. You didn't really get that impact from the codex. You do from all those large pictures of big armies and kind of little dioramas and things like that, but it's not the same until you have it in front of you. So overall, I think looking at them together in the flesh, for me, it's just awesome. So for all you Leagues of Votann fans out there, 100% get involved. Not that you weren't going to already. But what was it like to build all of these miniatures? Well, as discussed in the previous section of the video, where I went through the sprues and the instruction booklets and things like that, everything I kind of thought would be the case with them was the case. They were pretty easy to clip out. There was a fair bit of cleanup on some outward facing contact points, but overall the sprues were really nicely laid out. Very, very easy to put together for the most part, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. The models generally feel quite open, dynamic, and in motion, particularly when you're building them. They don't feel too difficult to kind of put together, including the ones that are kind of holding their weapons across their body, such as the Cthonian Beserks, or indeed the Brokhyr Thunderkyn. The Hearthguard look fantastic. They just look awesome. They were surprisingly small, I thought, for being on 32mm bases. Should have been my clue when I put them together, but I envisioned them to be as big as the Einhyr champion. I mean, if I just pop them side by side, you can see the height difference on them is quite considerable, although he does have his tactical rock. There were a couple of pain points when building them, however. The Brokhyr Thunderkyn had a few challenges, particularly when it came to putting their bodies together, just in terms of all the gear that's on the back, this backpack area. It's just kind of at times requires a little bit of a forcing it just to make sure that it kind of clips into place, because it won't quite sit right on one of them. I can't remember which one, but one of them it was just like it just needed to be pushed just a little bit more, and I couldn't figure that out, so do watch out for that. I think it was the second one in the book. Yes, second one in the instruction booklet. And I mean, that was the only real challenge. As for the Hekaton Land Fortress, there is one tiny gap on the back right-hand side of the kit, and it was just from where I didn't press it close enough. It's back here. You can see it. Maybe just about on there. But otherwise, it went together really nicely. For something of this size, it kind of feels like almost Land Raider level. It's not as big as a Land Raider, but it's big and it's tall and it's impressive. But for something of this size, for it to kind of just slot together as nicely as it does was really, really interesting. So aside from that one challenge with that second Brokhyr Thunderkyn in the instruction booklet and user error when building the Hekaton Land Fortress, this was a really nice building experience. However, the problems with the kits, and it is consistent across all of them, is within those instruction booklets not labelling what the weapons are, particularly with the big guns. On the Brokhyr Thunderkyn, the Hekaton Land Fortress and the Sagitaur, as vehicles they are kind of quite central to the army. They're big, they're imposing models, and it's not like having a sort of slightly different looking sort of assault weapon. You know, if you get like the plasma gun or the melter gun wrong, not a lot of people are really upset if it's, you know, proxied as something else. Whereas with these guys, if you do fully assemble them and you've got the wrong guns on, that's kind of fair enough if someone does say, hey, look, it's a WYSIWYG tournament that we're at, for example. It's also a brand new faction, and that is important to note. Because it's brand new, it means that the weapons haven't been seen before. They do draw quite heavily at times from the Imperium, for example, the bolt cannons and things like that. They're very clearly bolt cannons, but for you newbies out there who aren't as obsessed with staring at plastic as, say, me, then you might not necessarily recognize a bolt weapon from a mile away. I think maybe in terms of improving those instruction booklets, it would be really nice if Games Workshop had a little bit of a key in there, or just something to denote what each one was. Even if in the pictures it was just a little label that said, this is A, this is B, and this is C. And then in the back there was an index that indicated which one of them it was, just to avoid having the text in the instructions itself to make them a little bit cleaner. That would be a really good thing to have on this stuff. I don't know, it might seem like I'm just kind of picking on that one aspect, but for me it is very big. I had to look at the codex, I had to look at my previous builds. I had to investigate. I had to look for captions on pictures of models that had been previously painted to understand what some of them were. And that for me was quite a long process because I don't like building. So making building longer immediately marks down for me. I don't know, you guys tell me at home what you think. Maybe I'm just splitting hairs, but for me that was a big miss. I just wish that there was some way of labeling what it was. Weapons that we've never seen before, I would really like for them to be labeled. It's like with the Tau thing, right? With all of those systems that finally got codified in the codex as to what they were. And then there's a lot of people out there with Tau armies that have got the wrong things glued onto the wrong things because they didn't know what they were before. So yes, there you have it. Those are my thoughts on all of the Leagues of Votann kits. But I know what you're really here for. I know what you're waiting for. You're waiting for the Land Raider scale rating. Oh yes, I know you are. So what would I give it on the Land Raider scale? Well, I'm not going to go through it kit by kit because we'll be here for a while. But I think in general, the sprues are really well laid out. There isn't a ton of cleanup to do on them. They're very nicely placed in terms of those contact points with the sprue being on outside or inside details. However, I just can't look past those non-labeling of guns on the Leagues of Votann kits. So I think that for me is such a big miss that in terms of building these guys, they probably come down to a 6 out of 10. So I think a 6 out of 10 is fair. I hope you agree with me. And if not, let me know why not in the comments. And I hope you're looking forward to getting your hands on your own Leagues of Votann stuff. This is a really, really cool range. Like I said, there's so many positives here. There's just that one negative, which brings the rating down. But some are much higher than that. You know, ones where we don't have those weapon options. Basically everything other than the Hekaton Land Fortress, the Sagitaur, and the Brokhyr Thunderkyn is like a 9 out of 10. But those, in terms of their accessibility, they just come down. And that averages it out as 6 out of 10 for me. I'm sorry. So there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're looking forward to a ton of painting content for the Leagues of Votann. Let me know if you're following along with my own personal League of Votann custom scheme. I still don't know what to call it. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you all very soon for more painting content and more review videos. I hope you have a great week. Happy wargaming. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, just like these amazing, wonderful people have done. And if you really like this video or you just want to shoot me some support, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.